protection just wasn't good enough. The extra weight caused mechanical issues. The commander/gunner would often get shot in the head trying to see anything because he didn't actually have any optics other than his gun sight and had to poke his head over the top. And in general, the crew was just overworked. But the Panzerjäger as a concept had proven effective and economical, and a new one was on the way, the Marder. The Marder, or Martin in English, was not one vehicle, but three. Sort of. After being unpleasantly surprised at their inability to combat vehicles like the KV-1 and T-34, German command decided that a new Panzerjäger was needed. The Marder series would use the same design philosophy as the Panzerjäger 1 to mount either captured Soviet 76mm guns or the German 75mm Pak-40 on a few different chassis. The first of this series, the Marder 1, mostly used captured Lorraine 37L artillery tractor hulls, seized during the invasion of France. Although some vehicles use other French chassis, like the Hotchkiss Ace-39 or the FCM-36. The Marder 2 mounted the gun on Panzer II hulls, with the first version using the Panzer II-D or E vehicles, and later tanks using Model F hulls. The Marder 3 used captured Czech vehicles, namely the Panzer 38T. This came in three distinct sub-variants: the Marder 3, which mounted the captured Soviet 76mm gun, the Marder 3H, which mounted the Pak-40, and the Marder 3M, which was an attempt to improve the H model. Production numbers varied a lot between the three Marder vehicles, with 170 Marder 1s being built, around 850 Marder 2s, and over 1700 Marder 3s, the majority of which were the very capable Ausf M. The Marders were an economic way to get more 75mm guns into the fight. Nobody expected them to perform spectacularly well. They had much more armour coverage than their predecessors, depending on model of course, but were still very vulnerable. All three vehicles did mount MG34 or 42 machine guns, making them slightly less vulnerable to infantry attack, but the thin steel superstructure could only do so much. That being said, all three variants served until the end of the war, seeing combat in every theatre, and were always a threat to Allied vehicles, very few of which could take a hit from the Pak-40 and live to tell the tale. But the Pak-40 still needed to be relatively close to do critical damage. If the Panzerjäger could engage from farther away, then that would hugely increase its survivability. To engage from farther away, it would need a bigger gun, and to mount a bigger gun, a bigger chassis. The next Panzerjäger, the Hornis, or later the Nassau, would mount the huge 88mm Pak-43 on a Frankenstein Panzer III/Panzer IV chassis. But this technically isn't the first Panzerjäger to use the Panzer IV hull. You didn't think I'd forget about Fat Max, did you? Actually predating the Marder series was a prototype Panzerjäger named this, or sometimes this. Luckily it was less formally known as the Dicker Max, which is much easier. The Dicker Max came into being as early as 1939 and was designed around a 105mm K-18 field howitzer mounted on a heavily modified Panzer IV chassis. The vehicle was initially designed as a bunker buster, lobbing APHE shells into the Maginot Line. When this purpose faded away after the fall of France, it was instead trialled as an anti-tank weapon, with both Dicker Max prototypes being sent to the Eastern Front and seemingly racking up some serious kills. Both prototypes were eventually destroyed, one by enemy fire and one by an ammunition explosion. Fat Max was simply too fat, underpowered and a bit redundant for full-scale production. He did have an even fatter brother though, the Sturer Emil. The Germans had feared that the Dicker Max's 105mm gun may not be large enough to destroy the most stubborn fortifications, and so designed Stubborn Emil, who mounted a mammoth 128mm gun.
That's quite big.
A variant of the Flak 40 anti-aircraft gun. The gun was mated with a modified chassis of the failed VK-3001 heavy tank, a vehicle that never made it into service, but was instrumental in the design of the Tiger 1. The VK-30 hulls had to be lengthened to fit the gun into the vehicle, which in reality was obsolete even before they were completed, as the Maginot Line was no longer an issue, and the VK-30 itself had already been cancelled long ago. Instead, the two prototypes, Max and Moritz, lumbered to the Eastern Front to take on the Soviet heavies. Max was destroyed sometime in the summer of 1942, while Moritz and her crew racked up over 20 kills before being captured in 1943, and she is now on display in Kubinka Tank Museum. Anyway, the Nassau.